Professor Youru Wang has been teaching at Rowan for, I don't even remember. I mean, he's been here as long as I've been here.
25 years.
See, exactly. And I've been here for just a little bit less than that. He is an incredibly valued member of our department, the author of really a great many fascinating books, typically working on Buddhist thought, East Asian thought of various sorts, Taoism, but also in a very productive relationship with contemporary European philosophy. And so he's been an enormously interesting and valuable interlocutor, not only for those of us on the religion side, but also for those of us on the philosophy side of the department. We are tremendously grateful to have a scholar of his breadth and his quality here. And I would like to ask all of you to help me welcome Dr. Wang as he presents on friendship and forgetfulness in the Daoist Zhuangzi and Jacques Derrida.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Edward, for introducing me. So, since our deans encourage us to promote publication, so first I spent 2 minutes to talk about my talk is coming from the book called Ethical Dimension of Forgetfulness, engaging the Daoist Zhuangzi in study of cultivated forgetting. So forgetting sounds like something part of your capacity to be cultivated. So that's my book. Published, the copyright is this year. I only show 9 chapters. The first chapter after introduction is a survey of recent scholarship on study of forgetting and the ethics of forgetting. So evolved from the end of last century's wave of study memory. Memory study is still very popular. But gradually you see the emergence of study of forgetting. So that's the first part. Second chapter, I talk about therapeutic forgetting in this Daoist text. And number 3, that's in more metaphysical area, talk about forgetting oneself or personal identity. And in relationship to time otherness, that's European terminology I took away from Paul Ricoeur. Chapter 4 talk about social institutional level of forgetting. So first part is about conception of responsiveness to others in relation to forgetting oneself. And second, chapter 5 talk about second part that limited to Daoist capacity for responsiveness to others. So first is general concept of responsiveness. The second is agency, the subject's capacity to be responsive. And number 6 talk about more broader area of criticizing invariableness of different ethical norms. So in overlapping with Jonathan Dempsey, if his name is correct, remember his holism. He's famous as analytic philosopher in both epistemology and now in ethics. And number 7, empathy. Last year I already presented. So come down to chapter 8, forgetfulness and friendship, that's today's talk. And after that, the last chapter is answering 2 specific questions on forgetting. The first is, can a happy forgetting be possible? So that's a question French philosopher Paul Ricoeur tried to criticize Kierkegaard. Students take existential course will know that. So Kierkegaard and Daoist both believing in happy forgetting. So forgetting is not negative. Forgetting is not you losing memory. So Paul Ricoeur definitely refused that view, but I argue with that it's possible. So that's the first question. Second question, can Daoist forgetfulness be a virtue? So if you have virtue ethics background, you understand that. So in that book, I argue that it's possible forgetfulness be in the list of virtue. So it's more than Aristotelian list of virtue and any modern Western list. Some Western scholars like Dr. Drive, right, uneasy virtues, try to list something outside Aristotelian list. So here maybe one from Daoist called forgetfulness. So now start from today's lecture. So that's too much content. I can only limit it. I try to, isolate one small piece, not even the whole chapter on forgetfulness and ethical dimension and friendship. It's just one part, because that chapter is still very long. I involve many more things, including what Kant later on talk about partiality, the friendship, personal relationship. Kant oppose a kind of too much familiarity will cause problem. So like a similar situation, impartiality and impartiality. Actually, that's good part, but unfortunately, I didn't include here. So I just focused on to a very small part. I start with Nietzsche, a German philosopher. His description for the plight and fragility of friendship. So face problematic of friendship between individuals in modern social context. So that's his word. That's from gay science. We are two ships, each of which has its goal and a course. Our paths may cross, and we may celebrate a feast together, as we did. And then the good ships rested so quietly in one harbor and one sunshine. But then the almighty force of our tasks drove us apart again into different seas. And perhaps we should never see each other again. Perhaps we should meet again, but fail to recognize each other. So our exposure to different seas, suns, has changed us. So acknowledging the transient nature of personal friendship and the different distance ineluctably involved, Nietzsche designates this friendship as star friendship, which means it's rare. Which means rare. Realizing that the memory of former friendships in such situation is indeed more sacred. So Nietzsche calls it sacred. Nietzsche seems to echo Aristotle's classical position here. Complete or perfect friendship is very rare. But Nietzsche nevertheless conveys the sense that finding and keeping a genuine friendship is more difficult and challenging in this modern era. So what we should note is not just a representative of modern experience and practice of friendship, but also the effort to make new ways of conceptualizing friendship that takes into account the factors of fleetingness and mobility. So it is to this new way of theorizing friendship, including a critique of Western classical notion of friendship, Jacques Derrida and his fellows have committed. So it also will be on this horizon I will proceed to discuss the Daoist Zhuangzi view on friendship and forgetting. So in what follows, I will survey several central themes of Derrida discourse on friendship. So each will be connected to a discussion on Daoist texts. And these studies will unfold that Daoist view of friendship is more comparable to Derrida's non-classical approach than to Aristotle's in its distinctive ethical inquiries. So both the Derrida and Zhuangzian conception include a temporal dimension, a dimension of time, and value the loss and mourning of friendship despite the contrast between Derrida's melancholic tone, has a very heavy tone, to Zhuangzi's celebration of natural destiny. So both criticize self-sameness. That's a popular word in European continental philosophy. And self-centrality, to see difference, distance, disruption. I call it 3Ds, as inevitable to friendship. So both relate forgetfulness to friendship. So also the Zhuangzi is more able to thematize this relationship. So suppose the part is about critique of self-same and the involvement of forgetfulness in friendship. So first part, from critique of self-same to forgetfulness of friendship in Jacques Derrida, the first part is Western. So corresponding to a sheer certainty and permanence of primary friendship is a classical definition of friend as another self, very famous, with Aristotle's book and Cicero, or as an image of oneself. So in terms of this notion, not only is there total sameness within oneself, but the other as friend is also same as oneself. So as a result, the goodness of friends become only derivative from one's own goodness. So for Derrida, Aristotle inscribes friendship in a single self-same configuration. That's from his famous book, The Politics of Friendship. So Cicero, that's Derrida's words, envisage the friend as the duplicate, the reproduction, the copy, the same. That is the whole story. A narcissistic projection of the ideal image, not only ideal image, it's its own ideal image. So to fight against such narcissism as self-same, Derrida insists that one finds the other even in oneself. Already, the same dissymmetry and tension of surviving other in oneself. In the oneself that's out of joint with its own existence, since living oneself as of oneself can be done only by letting the other come. So Derrida sharply criticizes those who cannot think, or who thinks nothing other than self. Now, if man has friends, if he desires friends, it's because man thinks and thinks the other. Not because he thinks only about himself. They extend the self-same to the other, or appropriate the other into oneself. So he believes that the thought of man only to the extent that it is thought of the other core thought of the mortal. So the emphasis on the other as the mortal shows that human existential finitude is a central element in Derrida's recognition of instability, fleetingness of friendship, along with other constitutive factors such as death, mourning. The argument that friendship is not something at one's disposal. Similarly, attests to the problematic of self-same. So being an open-minded process, friendship must constantly put faith, confidence, commitment to test. It is a loving response to the other that interrupts self-same or self-centrality, make friendship possible. So even Aristotle himself contradicts this second self-theory by admitting that it is an act of loving rather than being loved. Think about loving others, right? It's active. Being loved, it's more passive. Accept, I want being loved. Or wishing and doing good for the sake of the friend himself. They more appropriately characterize the essence of friendship. So here involves, even later, a kind of critique of Western golden rule based on some postmodern interpretation on exchange, tools to tools, good to good, bad to bad, a kind of exchange, but more close to the essence of friendship, more close to altruism. So this postmodern critique of self-same and absolute unity in the classical notion of friendship pursues difference, distance, disruption as inextricable elements of friendship. So Derrida critically cites Kant. Kant requires that the friends to stay at a proper distance from each other. That may be controversial. Friendship for Kant is never for a moment safe from interruption. That's from his second critique of practical reason. That's 2017 Cambridge Press new edition. Derrida admits that at least Kant grants the necessity of this distance. And therefore, in this regard, is closer than classical writers to the true essence of friendship. So loving others is essence of friendship. Perhaps Nietzsche more perceptively depicts than Kant does the difference between friends, reflecting to yourself on how various are the feelings, how divided the opinions, even among your closest acquaintance, how even the same opinions are of quite a different rank, intensity, in the heads of your friends than they are in yours. How manifold are occasions for misunderstanding. How uncertain is the ground upon which all alliance friendships rest. Originating in the inextricable interweaving of character, occupation, talent, environment. That's from Nietzsche's Human or to Human. I'm sorry. So following this line of thinking, Bradshaw, as the French writer, also thinker, even though you cannot define him as a philosopher, but he's very influential in 20th century French thought. Bradshaw further attacks any essentialism regarding friendship, draws a sharp distinction from classical notion. Here's what he said in his book on friendship. We must give up trying to know those to whom we are linked by something essential. We must greet them in the relation with the unknown, the common strangeness that does not allow us to speak of our friends, but only to speak to them. An infinite distance, the fundamental separation on the basis of which what separates becomes relation. So here discretion lies not in the simple refusal to put forth confidence, but is in the interval. From me to the other, who is a friend, measures all that is between us. Interruption of being that never authorized me to use him to my knowledge of him, and that brings us in the difference. So sounds the echo of Kant's second categorical imperative. That's my personal view. So Bradshaw attempts to give difference, distance, interruption, reservation, lack of full personal knowledge their proper place in the structure and development of friendship, which was ignored. Furthermore, friendship for Bradshaw involves a relation to the cessation of friendship and its erasure. So here what he says. At a certain moment, this discretion becomes the fissure of death. Speech responding to someone who speaks from the other shore, and where even in our life, the measurelessness of the moment of dying would like to complete itself. Not the deepening of the separation, but its erasure, its leveling out, and the dissipation of the void between us. From here, Bradshaw proceeds to address the relation between forgetfulness and friendship in an unprecedented way, I would say, in the entire history of Western discourse on friendship. As he reveals the limits of classical view that friendship can safely survive through memory after the death of a friend, undoubtedly, we will still be able to follow the same path. We can let the image come. We can appeal to an absence that we will imagine by deceptive consolation to be our own. We can inward remember, but thought knows that one does not remember. Without memory, without thought, it already struggles in the invisible, where everything sinks back to indifference. This is the thought's profound grief. It must accompany friendship into oblivion. So Bradshaw perhaps the first was thinker to explicitly, positively relate forgetfulness to friendship. So Aristotle once mentioned, that's in his Eudemia Ethics, not Nicomachean, that when a wicked men stay in company with others, they can forget many grievous deeds of the past, as well as their anxiety for the future. So that seems to be a positive case for the relation of forgetting and friendship, and especially for the positive role of friendship. But it's still very limited to what he called his interest in why friendship is more desirable for some people rather than for others. So Nietzsche suggests that in regard to an existence of suffering, the ancients sought forgetfulness. Here, ancients, in his book, that's Human or to Human, referring to the Eastern religion and the early Greek thought. Insofar as the loss of friendship is normally considered part of human suffering, forgetfulness that Nietzsche recommends here can be applied, but it's still not directly indicated. In contrast, the Bradshaw account is far more direct and outlined by Derrida's reiteration. Oblivion is necessary. Oblivion must. That's what Derrida put in his book. So the way Bradshaw Derrida reads the point of forgetfulness in relation to friendship is not only surprising to me, but extremely impressive. However, the reason for doing so needed to be figured out in the first place. To my understanding, there are two levels to the meaning of forgetting here, addressed by Blasio and Derrida. First, deal with intrinsic structure of friendship, where there are not only elements of affinity, closeness, continuity, survival, and memory, but also components of difference, distance, interruption, dying, death, and forgetting. So forgetting, memory start to be included in this group of polarity. However, forgetting along with dying, death, absence, so on, cannot be excluded or controlled by memory and survival, which are not guaranteed by the process of change with immanent finitude. So in the sense of this structural intertwining, forgetting is not negative, but is neutral, indifferent. It's a condition for memory, just as the end or erasure of friendship is a condition for the advent of friendship. So without this aspect of unbinding, so this bond and unbinding, no friendship has ever seen the light of day. That's what Derrida said. So due to its innateness to friendship, forgetfulness is inevitable, necessary. As a critically famous British scholar of continental philosophy explains, Derrida requires the recognition of more fundamental forgetfulness. A forgetfulness more fundamental than and not exhausted by any single incident of forgetting or its facticity. So based on the first level of structural ineluctability of forgetting to friendship, the second level is more prescriptive and ethical. Derrida suggested that all classical hierarchies with regard to friendship at least suspended in this non-negative neutral reality. It calls into question not only our memory of friend, but our memory of what a friendship has always meant. On the death of the friend, the measurelessness of the moment of dying, the event of death, reveals and effaces at the same time the truth of friendship. So here comes the imperative, or Bolivian must. Derrida demands we forget the classical theory or truth about friendship. You can argue about it. The hierarchical categories of memory over forgetting, endurance over rupture, survival over death, dying, and so on, as a result of recognizing the profound immanent finitude. As critically rightly observed, this forgetfulness is paradoxical. It's a form of forgetting. It's also for remembering what a Blasio stressed as only speaking to rather than speaking of the distant or dead friend, a response to that which one can never adequately respond, a speaking to that speaks out of the impossible experience of dying. And in Derrida's term, a certain non-response in a response that never comes to an end. When he says adieu to Levinas in his famous article 1999. So in other words, we must perform forgetting first in order to do a right thing. For instance, proper conceptualization of friendship. So this imperative forgetting is both pre-ethical and ethical. So I will skip that. So Blasio signals an underlying connection between profound grief, inevitable forgetfulness. Both Blasio and Derrida not only have not explored possibility of letting go of grief through forgetting, as Nietzsche suggested. in the discourse of palliative forgetfulness. But despite this, I think theoretically, Blanchard and Derrida could accept such a possibility. Besides having criticized the self-sameness of classical definition, Derrida fully realized the otherness of friend without basing friendship on any form of narcissism. So I'm going to jump from this part to the Daoist part. So anyway, forgetfulness implies relinquishing any affirmation of self-same. But this meaning is not single out for thematization. For thematization, we go to Daoist Zhuangzi about forgetting oneself and mutual forgetting. So if you have friends, how can you mutually forget each other? So first I sum up the Zhuangzi position, forgetting oneself in a nutshell, aims at forgetting, letting go of illusory unity, identity, separability from the other, unchangeability, centrality of oneself. So that's what Daoist means. In addition to reasoning on impossibility of such self-same, the Zhuangzi provides many anecdotes to illustrate the author's point. I skip those examples because I don't believe I describe it vividly. So sounds boring, rather skip. So only last one, many those stories are told in an environment of friends stay together. They start talking about forgetting. So one example, Master Yu is happy with whatever identity he will become after death, whether he becomes a sick chicken, a crossbow, a cat in his imagination. He said, I'm okay with that. It's because of such positive, receptive attitude toward inevitable change, transformation, the encouraged forgetfulness of one's fixed identity. That's why to stay away from the theory about second self, friend as second self. Rather go with flow and moving along with otherness within and without. So here is the story. Master Sanghu, Men Zifan, and Master Qin Zhang came to be friends and talk to each other. It's just like all of us. Who can be together in their very not being together? So who can be together with each other while not being together? Doing something for each other, as friends do, for doing nothing. So is that totally confusing? Who can climb up upon the heavens, roaming on the mists? Those are metaphorical descriptions. So living their lives in mutual forgetfulness. So three of men look at each other and burst into laugh. So none of them reluctant in his heart. That's the original translation. So they become friends. That's the newest English translation from University of Chicago professor, it's 2020 philosophical translation. So forgetfulness in friendship works for a wider ethical aim in Daoism as unimpededly wandering through the fluid world, moving along with infinite change and transformation. So my point is that to understand its view of forgetfulness friendship must be understood inside this broader concept. So here, mutual forgetfulness. Contemporary is not correctly translated into English. They just use forget of oneself. Therefore forget each other. So the forget each other in Chinese means mutual forgetting. In previous translation, all missed until this 2020 translation. So I do some little bit textual study on that. So I look at further the later classical tradition of exegesis, interpretation, back to the Daoist texts to see their interpretation of that strange sentence, being together in this very not being together, doing things for each other in this doing nothing. That's totally, confusing, right? So that's paradoxicality. I mentioned Derrida's non-oppositional logic may find some affinity, and Lyotard's paralogic also. But they didn't spare a lot of space to explain that. So the reason for such linkage and reconciliation of opposites have not been clearly explained in English literature are these Daoist texts. So that's what I do, but I will skip those textual studies. They basically explain to you how can you understand that acknowledge being friends with each other, but at the same time, you are not being with each other. So what they mean is that avoid intentional, purposeful, deliberate thought on being friend. So you go with the flow. You're being spontaneous. So you want to be friendly. Be all people, very easy you will have many friends, right? Even on Kant last week we discussed, I remember you say Kant actually mentioned that it's impossible from practical angle. I remember Edward said, it's from practical angle, it's impossible. Being friends with everybody, right? It's not say Kant denies that. Kant still says that's the model for very high degree of humanity itself. So actually he praised that. But sometimes people just focus on, he thinks it's impossible. So we do have a dilemma in universal friendship. So sometimes I didn't put it here today to present. We must distinguish friendliness. So in Nicomachean ethics, Aristotle used both friendship as virtue, friendly as virtue. But now in modern analytical age, like after Thomas Nagel's book, Possibility of Altruism, I guess, he addressed partiality, impartiality. So still possible we can do more analysis. So here I look at the traditional interpretation. They mention first is not intentional, not a deliberate, not a calculative, being natural. So going back to the Daoist idea here, Wu Wei. Sorry. Here, down the line, the Wu Wei, which means action of non-action, effortless action. So with Daoist emphasis on spontaneity, naturalness, being friend, following natural circumstances. So we naturally being friend. So I don't know if it can be applied to a boyfriend, girlfriend. You seek for girlfriend. So the seeking is deliberate, right? Intentional. But here is not that kind of friendship, relationship. It's more general. Daoism opposes that. So they use no mind, which means in modern context, having no mind here. I'm sorry, it does not work. And doing something for each other by doing nothing means even though we are not together, we do our things, but those things can benefit from each other in the same direction, even though we are not present to each other. So this reminds me of, in next page, I talk about that. I remember Cicero mentioned that when friends is absent, the friendship is still present. So here you see certain similarity. But don't forget, Daoist emphasis is on without doing things without artificiality. So another concept called Wu Ji here. Without trace, that's a concept of trace. Without trace, artificiality. So overall, this paradoxical expression means that we can use what the former analytic philosopher Wang talked about, how to solve paradox. You try to impose more meanings, make clear more meanings, then sometimes paradox comes. So they always are presented in a context. So in the context, you can find a clue to this paradox. So are Daoist paradox. So they praise effortless action, including having friends. And that's for one thing. So later on, the last part about constraint on suitability and a kind of style, Daoist style friendship. I read the original sentence. Everyone can feel that one's nature is satisfied. Then one can forget each other. So you're following your own nature. Being friends are natural. So why do you need an idea? I need a friend. I'm seeking a friend. Right? You are already friendly to other people. So here, remind me of difference between Aristotle in his ethics about sufficiency. Aristotle said, for some people, they don't need friends if they are very sufficient, self-sufficient person. But here, Daoist sufficiency means you meet your nature. Your nature includes your human nature requirement. You meet that. Then you can naturally have friends. So next I go to famous views, and we'll finish in about 8 minutes. Friendships between noble persons are flavorless. You cannot taste sweetness. I'm sorry. Everyone's totally against Western culture here. We talk about sweetie, something. But that's not it. While friendship between petty persons are sweet, like a fruit liquor. So I give interpretation in what is following. So, totally 9 points. So first, use flavorless or related words to describe a kind of agential capacity. So being friend, first you need to have fitting capacity, right? Otherwise, how can you have friends? A state of mind. This capacity can be applied to and guide one's relationship with other people, other things in general. So that's Daoist style. Friendship is one of examples. So that's the first point about understanding Daoist idea of friendship. Second, Daoist style friendship is characterized by emptiness, openness. calmness, stillness. How can you be calm if you are in a position with your lover or your close friend? So here is more general setting. So calmness, stillness. But even your couple, you cannot fight all the time, right? You need to calm down, right? So Daoist is not wrong. Calmness, stillness will facilitate you do many things, including your relationship. So this kind of openness to others, including friends, without being fixed on any preconception. I take for granted, he's my friend, so I think what he should do to us. But to your surprise, things happen. So that's a preconception, too much. Crucial to any ongoing friendship. Since friends are constantly challenged by otherness and change in daily situations. So one may wonder that why a friendship needs to involve calmness, stillness. I already said something, right? So for Daoists that you need to follow condition of things. You don't interfere with current situations. If a situation is not mature for your action, you never take it. So you need to be patient. So in my class of Daoist, I taught students, Daoists are patient persons. Right? So once in honors class, students say, oh, Daoists are so patient. That's so difficult. Yeah, they must be patient. But there will be controversial over that. How can you patient some bad things? So that's number 2, calmness, still. Number 3, leads to non-craving, because flavorless also means, in exegetic tradition, means desiring less. So you desire less from your friends. Will that work? And sometimes we desire too much from each other, right? That could be a problem, cause the relationship going down. So no craving, less craving, desire less. So flavorless, that's one translation, contrasts the intensity of flavor. So decreased flavor symbolizes decreased desire and detachment from desire. That's Daoist central concern. So that's number 3. Number 4, desiring less signals a strong opposition to utilitarian friendship. That's why it's a petty person always feels sweet, because they have use of friends. So that's opposed by Aristotle's ethics already. So you see East and West overlapping on that. So strongly against utilitarian friendship. Aristotle calls it's not a real friendship. It's not a primary, it's a secondary. Number 4, a friendship of desiring less signal a strong opposition to, I already talked about utilitarian friendship. Number 5, in this way, Daoist style friendship cautions against going to any extreme. So in this aspect, I would say it echoes Kant in friendship. Yeah, many people know, because the contemporary ethical discussion, many people dismiss that. The end of critique of practical reasoning, Kant a special section on friendship. Still, you talk about friendship, a philosophy of friendship, you must read. So similar to desiring too much, pushing anything to the extreme will hurt friendship. That's what Daoism is concerned with. A complete unity also, over familiarity, lack of independence, or the necessary space distance, what Nietzsche and modern Western thinker struggle so hard. But between friends, these are all example extremities in friendship. So avoid one-sidedness, bias, fixation, facilitates one to be flexible. Even your friends, you need to be flexible. And with going with being flexible about difference and change. And because those difficulties, I already mentioned, modern thinker like Nietzsche, Bracha, Derrida pay so much attention to that. So just the last four. Through openness or absence of one-sidedness, Daoist style allows placidity, mildness, moderation. That's characterized Daoist style. Even temperedness. That's still practical, So I shall just skip. Number 7 is, so I shall stop talking about that. Number 8, I can skip it.
If you want to quickly summarize.
The last few points, just to go back to naturalness. Must follow your nature. Here, human nature is not a kind of human nature being prescribed by God. Right? It's more close to modern Western idea of human nature. But in Western culture, sometimes we fall into opposition between nature and culture. But in Daoism, nature culture has no separation, cannot be cut off. So culture comes from nature, right? But still nature will remind us of culture's limitation. So that will be Daoist view. Because I remember that contemporary virtue ethics is called near-Aristotelian virtue ethics. So they, like the famous the lady published virtue ethics book, talk about nature play an important role in human seeking of virtue. I shall stop here. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
So thank you for this fascinating talk. All right, so I have lots of questions. I suspect lots of you have lots of questions. We have about 15 minutes for questions. So who's good? So who wants to start? Oh, look at all those hands. Go with Jacob first. All right, all you have to do is just ignore it, but just so the question gets on the recording. Forget it there.
Hi. So what I was thinking is, I was thinking of how a lot of young people, even though people are so connected to their friends through things like social media and phones, there seems to be a loneliness epidemic and people really not having to have close relationships with friends. And I was thinking, do you think that because people really don't practice things like forgetfulness or moderation, where people seem to now always be in contact with each other, always expecting things from each other, do you think
do you mean we need more forgetfulness?
Yes, in our culture.
Forget about your cell phone, please. Forget about your social media. Yes, some people did that publication. It's called forgetfulness in this digital age. The ethics of forgetfulness. So exactly what you are thinking about that. So yes, so you see the modern relevance to Daoist view of forgetfulness. Yeah, very good, very quick connection. Yeah, I agree with you.
When listening to how you speak, how you described friendship in Taoism, in my mind I drew a parallel with kind of how Rumi speaks on friendship. How he says it is that friendship or companionship is like a microcosm of divinity, and its true actualization, or when it's at its apotheosis or peak of beauty, is the same as a flower that is now gone and its aroma is lasting, wherein dwelling in that is like a heaven all its own. I want to know, would that kind of idea that when the friendship has passed and this idea of dwelling in the memory of that and having the pleasant forgetfulness being the actualization of the pinnacle of that friendship, would that fit in with this Daoist idea of forgetfulness?
Yes, naturalization also a term in recent analytical philosophy. So here, I know I'm not expert on Rumi, but Rumi is the point I respect very much. I hope I have time to be a student of Rumi. And Islamic philosophy recently started to appear a lot in English. I just don't have time to read. So I think they share certain things together. So remember, I recommend you a book that's in 1983, Daoism and Sufism, but not much more. You look at those online libraries, you see a lot of books on Islamic philosophy. Yeah, to my surprise. Yeah, but everybody's area is limited. So thank you for mentioning that to me.
Good questions. Anyone else got another? Do you want to follow up? Okay.
I thought there'd be more. I thought I wouldn't be able to ask a second one. Back towards the beginning, I saw a lot of mention of Nietzsche as well, alongside Derrida. I know that Derrida had at many times deconstructed the philosophy of Nietzsche, and I want to know, did they agree overall with Nietzsche's assessment of forgetfulness? Nietzsche saying on occasions that there wouldn't be things like happiness without forgetfulness. Would he have agreed with, or would Derrida have agreed with that kind of sentiment, or would he have kind of differed from that?
You ask me Derrida's view on Nietzsche, right? Derrida and Nietzsche, Derrida sometimes goes even farther. So actually, you look at Nietzsche sometimes expresses some moderate view. And other places, he may express more radical view. So there are different kinds of Nietzsche's view. So for those Nietzschean scholars, they try to offer a holistic picture, see different parts, different views of Nietzsche, and finally try to give more fair evaluation on Nietzsche's thought. But Derrida, what is called post-Nietzschean thought in France. So they may go much more. For example, something like anti-structure issue. You may say Nietzsche also has certain tendency to that, but it's not as clear as post-structuralist. So they still have some differences. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so this was really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm still thinking about how to formulate this question, but I think there's this idea in your talk that the recognition of the transience of friendship, or of everything basically, is going to push us towards a more or a less narcissistic and less utilitarian view of friendship where it's about profit. And I'm wondering if it's possible to problematize that connection. Like, you might think the other way around. It's like, well, hey, we're only here for a short amount of time, so you might as well get what you want out of other people, like the Robert Jur dialogue seems to express a thought like that.
So I make use of friends, then I forget. Totally forget. That would be bad.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if what would be a response to that type of thinking that's consistent with the spirit of the Zhuangzi.
First, I will say that's a good question. So I expect my colleagues will give me more tough time. That will be more exciting. Yes, that's inherent in any Daoist position. Because sometimes they say we need to go with the flow. There are no fixed right and wrong. So including friendship. Friendship goes on go in flow all the time. And you never guarantee tomorrow you still have this friendship. Maybe too much to say that. So different situations. But the Daoist can defend its position when answering your challenge. Is that Daoist point is that everything is in the process of change. Nothing can be outside of change, including friendship, including marriage, right? Everything. Therefore, how can we find a way to deal with human relationships? That's a big lesson, and nobody can ever complete that lesson, right? Through lifetime. So, in order to deal with that challenge to our way of life, you need that kind of open-mindedness, calm down, being flexible. Therefore, it will contribute to further friendship rather than say goodbye to friendship. So totally, I don't care. So that means you don't want friendship. But for individual choice, that should be okay. Like Aristotle says, some people, very strong, sufficient, they don't need too many friends. Also, too many friends will not work, right? So, but Daoism seems not to refuse friends. So you see so many stories, our friends talk. That's in my chapter, at the beginning I talk about it. Aristotle summarized 5 kinds of phenomena. Friends, so being friends, you must meet those conditions. First, you see each other. You can argue, no, my friend and me, we are dating, but we live in 2 cities. Is that possible? That presents an enormous challenge, right? But still, like a common situation is you see each other, you visit each other, right? You rest together. And when somebody is sick, you go there to practice your care. So Aristotle about 5. And last one is do things for your friend, only for the sake of your friend, he or herself. Not for other things. Not like, that's my friend, and next time I need this person, right? So that's altruism. That's Derrida said, Aristotle said, Derrida agreed. Derrida just goes a step further. What can characterize the essence of all friendship? The Daoism will not do that. But Daoism will say that common things, Daoist scripture texts involved those, even nowadays, 2,000 years ago, Greeks and currently, whether Asian or American, still share that being friends. So nobody questions that. So what they question, like to discuss, is what underlying this friendship, the underlying condition for friendship, and the theorizing, conceptualizing friendship. That changes a lot with 20th century European thinkers from Nietzsche, Blasio, Derrida, and others. Some people just criticize them, think that, what these people talk about is called intellectual friendship. Because many times you work on your own. You don't need friends all the time. You need to work on your own. Therefore, even Blasio, Derrida, Nietzsche talk a lot about that, the independence. So we need more space. That's modern friendship. That's why a scholar I quote, because the time changed, our living condition changed, as Nietzsche said. It's different. The old time, the mobility is so small, so you can have a long-term relationship. But then now you find a job, a friend will leave you. So that seems we are in more difficult condition, but that's conditional. Yeah, we are influenced by it. Therefore, our conceptualizing of friends should also change. we should include not only positive. Why cannot we include negative aspect, like two sides of one coin? Then your theory is more comprehensive, right? So I don't know if I answer your question.
Let me just pop it right here. Go ahead.
So, in this, like, in that chain, there's a inherent, like, you need forgetfulness to have change. And
That's what Derrida implies, yes.
So, it seems that, like, with friendships, like, you grow and therefore you must forget past things, but where in that of, like, people that may be gone or something, where does, like, stuff that you don't forget but want to learn to become okay with, like, where is there an element of acceptance or being okay in the cycle of forgetting and friendship?
You mean certain things you don't need to forget, certain things you need to forget. So there is boundary. Yeah, here, actually, I imply that we can challenge that view. That's only my interpretation of Derrida's view. So it implies, as he said, we should forget all what truth, Western truth about friendship mean. Classical view mean that met. So we should forget in order to start with a new conceptualization. My challenge is, I'm sorry, maybe not answering your question, is that there is interconnection between memory and forgetting. There's no total memory, total forgetting. So when Derrida said forget, actually you work on classical texts, right? You work on those friends is second self. So here is symbolic. You need to forget means you don't attach to it. Keep a certain distance from it. But it seems you totally forget. It seems the philosophical study will always interplay between memory and forgetting. So that's a condition. Without pretexts, the classical text, how can you develop a new theories? So that's my question to that. But I haven't think through. So your question may remind me of that. I agree there are boundaries to that. So further analytical work can do that. To list what could be acceptable, what meet a condition to forget.
I think that just about wraps up our time. So I would like to ask you all to help me one more time in thanking Professor Wang for the wonderful talk.
Thank you.